Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier 10 Premium British Destroyer, HMS Druid. Druid is an odd little boat. I'm not going to lie, guys. I've been looking over this ship, trying to figure out how to start this video, what to talk about. This is a strange little ship. But what you need to know about Druid, the first and most important thing you need to take away from this, Druid is now the second destroyer in the game with no torpedo armament. That's right. This ship has 0 torpedo tubes. She makes her kin to Friesland over in the, right now, the European destroyer line, but she will become a Dutch ship once the Dutch nation arrives in the game. But let's talk about Druid. Let's talk about Druid for a minute, because this is a weird little ship. First things first, we'll go through the stats like we always do. Obviously, I can't show you gameplay, but we can talk and speculate, and let's have a look. HP pool, 25,300. Pretty solid for a high-tier destroyer. Not quite best in tier. Elbing still exists, and Harugumo edges this out by a couple hundred HP. But she's in the top 3. She is quite literally third, and it's a very narrow margin that puts her in third. So, a lot of health pool, and that's noteworthy in a minute, and I'll explain to you why when we start talking about consumables. So, this is a pretty, survivable destroyer in terms of the amount of health pool that she has. Her armor is not what's going to keep her in the game. That is very typical of a destroyer. She's covered in 19 millimeters of plate. Just like most high-tier destroyers, she will not be shrugging off too many incoming shells. Maneuverability and concealment. Very, very key stats for a destroyer. Let's talk about this. 35 knots. Top speed, pretty average. I'd say maybe even a little on the slow end, but that's maybe a little unfair, because some of the most popular destroyers at tier 10 these days, I'm looking at you, Småland and Daring and soon to be Vampire 2, all have 35 knots of speed. Now this is slow for tier 10, but it's not so uncommon and outrageous that it's terrible. Now, it does mean that she's not going to move around very fast, right? Daring suffers from this problem. You cannot reposition a Daring very quickly. You will also not be able to reposition a Druid very quickly, okay? Just the way it is. 690 turning circle there, you see? Pretty typical. Daring turns a little tighter. This is actually the same turning circle that Shimakaze has. Grozovo and Kaba have higher turning circles, as do the French and Elbing and Hayate, for example. But in general, 690, pretty average. 5.4 rudder shift, actually a bit on the high end. Kind of noteworthy here. I'm trying to look for somebody who's comparable. Harugumo, right? Harugumo's rudder shift is about this slow, but of course, Daring has a much better turning circle than Harugumo. Harugumo feels sluggish. That ship is sluggish. Druid here will probably feel that way on the rudder, but not necessarily on the turning circle. Detection radius, this is 7.9 with her camo. You see here, she comes with, obviously, premium camo here. 7.9. Full stealth rig HMS Druid gets down to 6.36 kilometer detection on the surface. So again, that puts her in the same league as Småland and Harugumo. A little worse, but comparable. Obviously, as a gunboat, Wargaming is going to give this ship some disadvantages so that the purely torpedo boats that have smaller, lower health pools and, smoke and engine boosts and all the rest of their little gimmicks can use them to disengage from this thing as they see here, because they absolutely will outspot her. So 636 is her surface detection when you rig her out for full stealth. Detectability range right there. By air there you see 4.1. That's you can't do much about that, but there it is. Artillery. Now here's where it starts to get interesting. We've talked about it. Druid is all about the guns. She has 2 main batteries forward. So let's have a check. These are 2 twin-barreled 5-inch guns. Okay, now if you remember, Daring and Daring's guns and Vampire Deuce's guns are 113 millimeters. They're like 4.1, 4.3, 4.5, something like this. They're not quite this large. These are straight up 5-inch barrels with a 1.8 second reload. Druid vomits out over 33 rounds per minute out of every single one of these barrels. This is interesting, guys. But she only has AP shells, okay? Only the AP. So this is like a little kind of pocket British light cruiser sort of thing with these shells. like the British light cruisers, they get improved ricochet angles and improved shell penetration times. Essentially, guys, if you're used to firing Minotaur's guns in terms of how those shells work, these shells are going to feel very, very similar. They're just smaller shells, 5-inch versus 6-inch, of course, and they do a little less damage. You see there, 2,200 AP shell damage. At the moment, that's where they're at. That may not survive testing. That might go up or down. I don't know. But, for example, Minotaur's shells do 3,200 base for a 6-inch shell. That difference feels kind of rough. One more thing I want to point out. Look at the shell velocity. Look at that shell velocity. 975 meters per second. This is almost... Actually, I think it's over 200 meters per second faster than Minotaur's shells. So if you're used to firing Minnow and Plymouth and all those ships, the British light cruiser AP shells tend to be fairly floaty, especially at ranges. I'm not sure Druid's going to suffer this problem. I'll be very, very curious to try out these guns. Now, something else I also want to point out, just like you have to think of Druid. You have to approach Druid, in my mind, when you go to spec out a captain on this ship, just like a French battleship. She has all these turrets forward, and that's all she has. So you need to be investing in preventive maintenance and main battery module 1 to try and reduce those gun-in caps and keep these turrets fighting and in the game as quickly as often as possible. But yeah, interesting. That's it. That's her offensive output right there. That's all you get. A defense is actually pretty solid. Of course, the main battery is dual purpose, and she is getting some flak out of that. Let's see, where is it? There we go. 4 flak bursts, 1820 damage. Not too shabby. Her mid-range is on the back of these 6-barreled 40 millimeter Bofors mount. She has 4 of these. So her mid-range aura is quite beefy. You see there 151 DPS. And she does have some 20 millimeter Orlikons that will make up her inner aura. So she doesn't get defensive fire. We'll go look at consumables in a minute. So she doesn't get anything to boost this. But in general, this is not too bad. Like, for a destroyer, this is not small into AA, but she will absolutely shoot down some planes that linger in her middle range bubble for too long. Let's go look at consumables here real briefly. Obviously, we're getting our DCP standard. We're getting the quick British smokes there. She gets high-tier British destroyer Hydro. 3-kilometer range. I mean, this is not amazing, but it's there. It's going to keep her from it's going to allow her to screen for torpedoes and hopefully not eat torpedoes while she's running around pew-pewing with her guns. And then, of course, we have specialized repair teams. Now, this is different from the heal that HMS Daring gets over in the tech tree. This is more akin to the British light cruiser heal that is so obscene. You see there, she only gets 2 charges, but of course, you'll probably take Superintendent on this captain to pick up the extra little heal, the extra heal charge, and then of course you're going to take Survivability Expert because it's a high tier destroyer, and you're going to have the heals are going to get bigger. She's going to have a bigger HP pool to start with, and so on and so on and so on. I was a little sad to not look over and see maybe some longer range Hydro, maybe radar on this boat. I don't know. We'll see. Druid is in an interesting place. She, like the German destroyer line that's releasing literally as I record this in World of Warships, Druid to me feels like a second line destroyer, the kind that you want to play about a half to a full kilometer behind something like a Shimakaze or a Kagero or whatever that's going to spot the other guy, and then wham, you are going to come in there with your AP shells and just murderize that dude while he's lit. You will take some damage in return for your trouble. You've got your heal for that. Are you going to use this ship to pick on battleships? Probably not. You can. The guns will be good enough to rack up some full pens against, the occasional casemate, and certainly some superstructure. You will be able to harass cruisers with these guns, especially with these shells velocities. I'm really curious to try out these guns and try the shell velocities, because I feel like that shell velocity is going to allow her to do some really mean things that if you play Minotaur enough, you get used to getting lots and lots of full pens, lots of citadels against certain cruisers. I'm feeling like that maybe Druid might be able to do the same thing, but you go bow on. She's not going to bounce a lot. She'll probably bounce that British light cruiser AP or any incoming small caliber AP, but she's not going to bounce battleship shells. I don't know. There's some really interesting things going on with this ship. I'm really curious to try it. This is another one that I will probably break my own typical rule, and I likely will go try this ship a few games just to kind of get a sense of where she's at right now and see where she's going in terms of how she fares, how she looks today versus where she finally lands when she rolls out into the game, whenever that is, wherever that is. So yeah, there's our first look at HMS Druid, a really unique, again, like a Friesland, gun-only destroyer, but she lacks some of that utility that Friesland brings. Friesland, of course, comes with smoke and long-range hydro. Druid here comes with short-range hydro and the short-duration smoke. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Interesting set of consumables. We'll see if she makes it through testing in this form or if she gets some changes. In the meantime, guys, there's our quick first look. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.